What's going on, guys? And welcome back to another episode of Stereotherapy. I'm your host, Lisa, and I would normally say, and Justine is along with me. Unfortunately, today she did not join me on this episode. Her work schedule's been a little insane, and we really wanted to get this conversation out and have our guest on, and it just worked with the scheduling. And Justine gave me the go ahead and said, let's get this out. We want to give it the proper listening time. We don't want it to get lost in the holiday shuffle, but Justine will be back. I cannot wait to be back with her for the new year. So just wait for that. If you're new here, this is the show that showcases the importance of music and mental health. I know we say this all the time, but it would truly just mean so much to Justine and I if you gave our show a follow wherever you are currently listening to this right now. It would really just help support this little show and pump it into those algorithms of people that this could really relate to. Today on the podcast, I sat down with Sulene. I am so thankful one of our biggest supporters on the podcast and longtime friends of mine, Jeremy, set this up for us. Sulene is an accomplished musician. She's a composer. She is a producer. She is just such a cool individual. And I was so honored to get to talk to her and have this conversation. I felt so seen talking to her, and it just we talked from anything about her music, how her own mental health journey and what she's done and what's worked for her and what the progress still is because it's an ongoing thing. We talked about playing in the White House. We talked about her time with touring with the band Fun and how Nate Roos inspired her and just so much more. And I walked away just being just like, damn, she's just so cool. And I can't wait to introduce her to you. I'll have all the links in the description below if you want to find Sulene, including that Substack she'll talk about towards the end of this conversation. So definitely check this out. And again, guys, in case you missed it, we will be taking a holiday break during the week of Christmas and New Year's, but we will be back for 2024 and can't wait. So just in case you don't see an episode, we will be back. We've not gone anywhere. But, let's just get into this. I know I've rambled on too much. I want you to meet Sulene. I'm really excited about this. I know Justine is too. Here is our conversation with the wonderful, amazing, talented Sulene. Again, thank you so much for coming on. And I guess I know it's a cliche thing to do, but if you want to just give an introduction to who you are, anything you want to throw out there, so if anyone listening can just, instead of reading something, they can hear you speak who you
Yeah.
are.
So my name is Sulene, and I am a composer and an artist, producer, just all things music. I create music. And yeah, I live in New York City. I'm from South Africa, and I get to do the thing I love every day.
And again, shout out to Jeremy for this because this is the reason we're together. And in moving to here and to the US and 19 at the age of 19 from Cape Town, like for those of us that are unfamiliar with South Africa, kind of, I guess, bring us to that. What makes that place so special for all of us that have never got to go to Cape Town yet?
Right. So I grew up like just a little bit outside of the like city center, I guess you'd say. But I mean, exceptionally beautiful place,
Mhm.
like mountains and beaches, ocean everywhere. The people are so friendly. It really is a wonderful place that I miss a lot. So it was great growing up there, like especially for the arts. Like, I was in a music scene that was like very it really like cultivated me perform as a performer being there, which I loved. So it was like a friendly environment in that way. And yeah, moving here, I mean, it was again, I moved to go to music school, so I was with all the music nerds, so I felt at home in that way. But culturally, it is pretty different. And I'd say the bigger culture shock was moving to New York, and I love New York. I always wanted to end up here, but New Yorkers are like, I've grown to love this, but they can be very blunt, almost like I don't want to say aggressive, but just very like assertive in the way
Mhm.
they do things. So in Cape Town, it's very different. We're very apologetic. It's like our way of being. We're very nice. We don't want to like ruffle any feathers. So that was hard for me when I first got here. but I think having a bit of both of those cultures has been really good for me, especially as an artist, so I can like advocate for myself and not be so like, shy all the time. Um, but yeah, I mean, I loved moving to the US. That was literally a dream come true to go to Berkeley. I was like, let's do this.
On a much smaller scale, but I can relate moving from the Midwest in my suburb of Illinois, even to New Jersey. Like you just said, like you described New Yorkers. A lot of people from New Jersey are the same way. They're very blunt. They're very go, 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 let's and it was me like, I don't know where I'm going, like these jug handles, like I'm lost here. And some people are very nice, but it's a very different kind of environment. So,
Yeah.
moving even from the Midwest, so I can't even imagine that, but like you said, it's got its pros and cons to it too, because I like to think I'm the same way where I might be a little more reserved, but now I'm more like, all right, well, you know what? If people around me are like that, I can be a little more like, as little as honk on my horn in traffic, or maybe I'd be like, okay,
Yeah.
like and it's like, all right, well, if everybody else around me is going to do it. And I mean, what do you think for you has been, besides the obvious, the biggest transition from that? And how did you get through that? Like anything to help you with that, whether it's now or even back then, looking back?
So I was really lucky because my best friend, his name is Sebastian, we grew up together in South Africa. At the end of high school, we were like, we both wanted to go to music school. So we both applied to Berkeley, just like real pipe dream, you know? Like, I didn't know to the extent that American students apply to like multiple universities and stuff. Like,
Mhm,
we were just like, let's do this, like very innocent. So leaving family obviously was a huge um adjustment for me. And I had a band. Like there was a lot that kept me very grounded in South Africa. But then we both got in, which is so wild. And I remember showing up and like at orientation we like met up again because we were getting ready to move and everything in South Africa. And we were in separate dorms, which also was a blessing because it made us make new friends. But
mhm,
we were like, how fucking lucky are we that it's literally like this dude is like my brother. I'm an only child, but he feels like my brother,
mhm.
is here with me. So that helped a lot. Because even, just being around someone with my accent now and then and speaking some Afrikaans, my first language, it was just really special. And as time went on, like we lived together, but we had very different friend groups and we kind of found ourselves. But I'm extremely grateful that there was just like someone from my like other life, it feels like, who was there, who like gets me on a deeper level.
I can't imagine. Like, that was my biggest thing moving, and granted, it was a much smaller scale than what you had done, but even doing that, like, I didn't have any friends or family, and, I was doing something. I know other people looking back, it was crazy, like, I moved for love, I moved for my now fiancé, but at the time, we were dating and doing long distance. But I moved and just had his friends and his family, and I realized how important it probably would have been if I had someone from, back home in Illinois or
Yeah.
family, and how much you miss that, and you kinda do need that to stay grounded, and just how important that is. So that's so great that Sebastian was
Yeah,
there
I'm
for
like
you.
looking back, I'm even more grateful when I think about it because it really was just like we didn't plan that. We were just like, this is what we want to do. And it's like,
Yeah.
damn, we were very lucky.
Well, man.
Also very privileged, I will say.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that though. I love to hear that too, that there's that experience too, because again, like that it's so important. And it was admittedly like I did like this little deep dive on you a little bit because I was like, oh, I want to get to know. And I know you started playing guitar at the age of 13 from what I saw. And what drew you to that instrument? And I know your teacher played a role of inspiration too for you at that time. How did she play a role in that in your music journey?
Oh my gosh, that was like a huge milestone. Okay, so I would say the main inspiration was to be rebellious, if I'm
Hmm.
honest. Um love my parents, they were very a good they were very encouraging with my music, but they're very very strict, so I grew up I grew up like playing piano and learning to read music and all that, and I love that, and it still is very important and comes in handy with what I do. But I think at that age, you're trying to figure out your own, sorry, my coffee is still kicking in, but like your own identity, you know? So
Yeah.
I'm very much like my mom, and I think just even at that age, I knew like we have very similar interests. And I was like, I wanna just try, and this happens a few times in my life where I'm like, I just wanna, like, flip the script and try something new. So, I dug up she had this acoustic guitar in the basement, I remember when I was 13, and I knew so little about guitars that I restrung it with steel strings because I didn't know there was a difference between nylon and steel string guitars, and then the next day, the neck was, like, warped
Oh
over.
my god.
Fence, you know? So then she
Yeah.
was like, "All right, let's like buy you a little starter electric guitar." But yeah, it really came from like wanting to find my own thing, and I'm so glad that I did it. I'll never forget, like my dad he gave me this incredible Fender when I was 16 for my 16th birthday. It was American Strat, which is like that's amazing as a 16th birthday present, you know?
Yeah.
And my dad was like, this better not be one of those things where like you have an interest for a few months and
Ri
you don't play anymore. And
yeah.
now I'm just like, Dad, I'm still playing the guitar.
Yeah.
It worked out. So yeah, that's kind of how it came about.
Oh, it's funny even hearing you say that because I was that kid that did it for a couple months, and I said, "It's too hard. I can't master. I can't do it." And, had the whole lessons. They got me, like, the electric tuner and everything. I couldn't do it. I was like, "I can't." I gave up admittedly, and now I wish I had it. Maybe who knows, maybe I'll pick it up again. But I was that kid. It was like I had it for a couple months and was like, "No," and it sat in the closet, and it's a shame now, but I was definitely that kid that did that.
Yeah, but there's something about like looking back on that, you know, I think I'm a pretty disciplined person in general, but at that age, you're a kid. Like
Mhm.
there's not a lot of stuff you wanna do that you don't like, that doesn't interest you, you know? So, I learned, saxophone as well, I tried to learn violin, like, there were other instruments where I was like, "I hate this,
Mhm.
like, I suck at this, I don't wanna practice," and then there was something, like, transcendent about guitar and piano that stuck around where it was like, I started writing, you know, and, like, playing in bands, so it was like that's how I, like, developed the love for it. I still hate practicing, you know? Like,
Yeah.
when I got to Berkeley, you know, kids practice a lot. You set aside hours every day, and I was still like, "Ugh, I hate this," you know? But at that point, you can see the bigger picture of things. So
Oh,
it makes sense when a lot of people say like, "Oh, I picked up piano, I picked up
yeah.
guitar, and it didn't stick," you know? Because I have had that experience with other things.
Yeah, that's good to know because and even talking about, while bringing up some of those bands, I know shout out to Jeremy because he told me, he's like, "You have to ask this," but then when I had no idea that you played guitar for the band Fun, for Nate Roos, obviously his project Fun, as their stage guitarist. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so I played in Nate Ruess's solo projects. That's like post Fun.
Yeah.
He's started his own band. Yeah. I mean, it was wild. Like I'd already done a little bit of touring, but it was much more like punk and DIY. And then I auditioned online because most of the band is in California and you know, I was in New York.
Mhm.
And I thought it was maybe like a long shot, you know, some a friend had recommended me. So thankful to this friend. And I got in, and I think from the moment that that happened and I got on the plane, it really the next year was like chaos, you know?
Mhm.
You like one of those times in your life where you're like, I fucking grew as a person. I had to, you know, it was like
Yeah.
survival mode. So it was really amazing. And I grew a lot as a performer thanks to Nate. He was really dead set on much less like executing the parts perfectly, which is like what was drilled into me in college. And he was really set on think about the audience, like give them a really great show. And so that was like emotionally very hard for me to work through in that first year. So when I think about it, you know, there was a lot of like, a rush of adrenaline in the beginning. It was like I was on the plane listening to the album, trying to learn it. Then all of a sudden we were in like, 10-hour-a-day rehearsals in Burbank, and like then we left. The first tour was in Europe, and it just kind of kept going. But that also coupled with, when you're in that situation, you're like, I have no choice. Like I have to get better at this thing. There's no like, woe is me. Maybe I'll try when next year when I feel a little stronger. I don't want to put too much pressure on myself. It's like, this is your job. So then after that year, when I became a much better performer, because it was lead guitarist, and he
Yeah.
wanted, his big inspiration was the E Street Band. So he was like, when you take a solo, like you have to go to the front of the stage and like perform. And again, that felt very unlike me. It almost felt like acting, but I've grown to love that because I'm like, that is a part of performing. You know what I mean? Especially if you're a session player, it's his dream, it's his vision. So incredibly steep learning curve. Um, and I'm grateful that I did it. I grew a lot. I got to travel a bunch. I mean, played incredible shows, like huge shows.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to like see how all of that happens, to see that part of life, like playing a TV show in Japan, and it's like we're not on those TV shows, like you don't actually play, you have to like mimic playing. But
Hmm.
just like having that experience being like, this is so funny. Like we
Yeah.
haven't like listened to the like recording versions of the song in a long time. We're like trying to remember how we did it. And like, we played Fuji Rock in Japan, and like it's just incredibly memorable things that happened. But yeah, I was very tired after those few years.
I can't imagine. Like I have so much respect for anyone that is one, either a musician, because obviously I lack those skills, but two, the tours, because I think people forget, maybe when you go see a show and you're like, all right, I got tickets, I'm gonna go this Monday night. Well, they've already had how many shows before that and traveling and just everything that goes into touring. I can't imagine. So I have so much respect for people like you that out there doing it, because I don't think I could.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, we were lucky that we had an amazing crew that
Yeah.
really took care of us. So, but without that, it could not work. We're a big band on stage. We had a lot of members, and we had like he didn't want to be very tracks heavy, so we had a lot of instruments and stuff. So it was like the fact that the crew was there, like helping with everything, was really amazing. So yeah, touring is crazy. That's like, when you have that experience with people, that's like you have a connection with them forever that is so different from any other friendship.
Yeah.
It's
I
wild.
I can't imagine it. Just like and even talking about shows, you also in your career, you've played at the White House
Yeah.
for President
Obama's White
Obama.
House. Let's
Yeah,
specify.
right, exactly. I was like, I have it. I'm like in my notes, but Obama's White House. Um, um, what was that like? And how do you prepare for something like that and get ready for that?
I was very excited. I wasn't super nervous at that point.
Yeah.
But we had like a pared down band. I think it was four of us. I can't really remember. I'm really glad that I like made the cut on that.
Yeah.
At that point we're a few years in, and I said to Nate when we found out about this White House gig, I was like, thank you honestly so much for putting me on. He was like, of course I'm gonna put you in. Like you're the lead guitarist. I sing all the duets with him. Like,
Yeah.
but I was like, thank you because this is huge for my visa. Like this
Hmm.
makes me feel like 100% solid on being here for a while. And
Hmm.
he actually went on to be my sponsor for one of my 3 years. So he's
Oh,
been very
wow.
influential with that. So the White House meant, yeah, it was cool as the White House, but to me it meant this like deeper thing of like I
Hmm.
have arrived.
Yeah.
Like like I not like I belong here, but it's like I've been here a minute, and the imposter syndrome was going away a little bit. But the actual show itself, it's funny, I was telling a friend this story just last night. Uh, they were just funny things that happened. Like it took me over an hour to get in. Same with the other Canadian on the crew. And because the security's crazy.
Oh,
And
I'm
then it was
sure.
like you can't like go to the bathroom without someone like escorting you there. Like I also found out you can't I was like in the East Wing and I was really hungry and I took a banana out of my bag and I'm like, you can't eat that in here, you know? It's like funny. It's like, I'm on the gig. What does it matter? And they're like, you guys are
Right.
not allowed to drink until you're done playing. They were like very, intense
Yeah.
about it. So I was like, oh, okay, sir. Like,
Yeah.
we're in the White House, you know?
Yep.
Got to go in the Oval Office, which was amazing. They gave us like a little bit of a tour, got to chat with Obama. And I'll always remember this part of the conversation because he was like, oh my God, what a charming man. He came up to me and was like, and what do you do in the band? And I was like, I'm the lead guitarist. And he said, good for you.
Oh.
I was like, thank you, Mr. President.
Yes.
It felt so funny to be like talking to the fucking president and be like, I play guitar.
Oh god, that's so amazing because I couldn't imagine, like you said, it's such a bigger thing than, "Okay, I'm playing at the White House," and to have that experience, I that's just so amazing to hear you had that experience, and it was a good experience as well, right? Like, I can't
Yeah,
imagine, years later, right, having that, but now that just makes me
yeah,
so
that was a
happy to
special
hear.
time to go, for
Yes.
sure. Um, Yeah, it was amazing. Everyone had so much fun and like really took in the moment. We just played two songs, like kind of stripped down. That was chill. It was everything around that was like really exciting. Because then when we were done, we could drink and party and meet everyone. And then we all went, Spotify brought us this. So there was a bunch of people from Spotify, and then we all went out afterwards. And there was a lot of like, we just played at the White House, you know? So very special day for multiple reasons.
And I mean, even diving into more of what you do is, I know you've written some scores for whether it was like Ray Donovan or The Affair, those TV shows. Like, I'm like, I probably have heard some of your music before diving into it and listening to that. How does that feel, or what's that process like? And two, like, how does that feel? Because much like, yeah, you could say Spotify or Instagram, you can get your music out there, but that, like having it on a show or anything like that, it can reach so many more people. Like,
Yeah.
how does that feel?
Dude, that's like a great love for me. I mean, that's why I wanted to go to Berkeley was for film scoring, because I was obsessed with Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, John Bryan's score.
Oh my God. Oh,
And it was like, at a young age, it kind of clicked then like, oh, musicians can like, craft this like landscape for movies. And I've always loved movies. Um, so those things kind of converged for me. But so I really love having my stuff. A lot of the work that I do is they call it sync in music or scoring, which is like, providing the music for shows or movies or ads. And it's really special to me, to the point where it's like, I don't need someone to know it's me. Like, I love being a part of the process of making a great work of art. Um, and the synergy of that is amazing. So when I worked on The Affair, I didn't write any original music for it. At the time, I was assistant composer to another composer who writes on it. And he wrote on Ray Donovan as well. But for Ray Donovan, I did do some additional music tracks that were credited to me. But I was very much involved in the process at the beginning. I left like halfway through the season, I think, when we are doing The Affair. Things got really, really crazy, really busy. But in the beginning, like, I remember Marcelo sent me, he was like, I got the script. I want to know what you think. It was like really late at night, and I stayed in the studio and I read it. And the next day I was like, it's honestly one of the best things I've ever read. Like, we gotta do this show. Like,
mhm.
this is amazing, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and was like, so I was very passionate about developing the score for The Affair. So I played a lot of stuff on it. I played guitar and sang, and my voice is used a lot, especially in those scores that I worked on for Marcelo. So that was a great way to learn about scoring because it's low stakes for me in a way. It was hard work, but it's not my name on it.
Mhm.
I'm credited as additional music sometimes and then, singing on stuff. But dude, I just like loved the process of like figuring out, so from script to like seeing it and then being like, what does this sound like? And then like coming in the morning, and Marcelo, he's a brilliant composer and musician, and he's sitting at the piano and he's like, a lot of times with scoring, you think of themes. So you're like, this is the theme for this character or
Hmm.
like this kind of emotion in the movie. So he's like, these are like a few themes I'm thinking of, and they were so beautiful. So that was very special. And then from there, now I scored a feature on my own. I loved working on that. I wasn't given quite as much freedom as I would have liked. It was temped with a lot. Tempt is like when they put in existing music to a movie to be like, this kind of what we're thinking. So it was fun. But then sometimes now it's happening more often. I get to do my thing, where someone's like, I really like your point of view and your music, and I'm not even gonna put a temp track really, just talk about it and then write. So extremely passionate about it. Like for next year, I'm really trying to double down on scoring more because it just like brings me so much joy. I went to this film festival a few weeks ago, and I knew a song of mine, Identity Crisis, was in the pilot for the show, but I didn't really know much about it. And then I showed up and was hanging out with everyone, and I was watching, and the pilot started playing, and Identity Crisis was the fucking theme song. And the pilot was about the stories of like very like diverse female comedians. I was like, this is
Yeah.
amazing. Like I'm so happy, like this
Yeah.
makes me as happy as like releasing a song as an artist, maybe even more.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting to hear how that works. And um, because I've never met anyone like yourself that does those things. And I don't even think about it. I guess when you're watching a show and then those certain pieces fit, uh, that there's just so much that goes into that. And I think about
Hmm.
even those moments, like any of my favorite TV shows, like just listening to how sometimes it's just perfectly put. Like there's a certain, whether it's a guitar or just a mood set. So that's just so cool, and I love that you explained that so beautifully because I think anyone listening to that is gonna be like, next time we watch a show, like, see that and sort of, like, more so appreciate it so much.
Yeah, yeah, because it's a lot of the time it's a very integral part to the art form, and
Yeah.
I really respect composers who know how to do that stuff really well. Because sorry, I'm getting a phone call, decline.
Mm.
um you really have to like go outside of yourself, especially if you're an artist. Like, no, this isn't the you show on this. Like,
Mhm.
you're working with a team, it's a different thing. And now you probably know, but I work a lot in advertising
Mhm.
because rent and stuff.
Yeah.
um and that's like another passion that I've developed, which I did not see coming, because it feels like scoring on a much smaller scale. So it'll be like 30 seconds or something, but it's also still telling a story and like supporting what the commercial is trying to convey. And yeah, I really enjoy the process a lot.
Yeah, and didn't you just do I think it was like an ad or commercial, um, for something in Cape Town in South Africa,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Yeah, I saw, and even, like, the little snippet, whether it was a reel or something, I was like, that process too, like, that looks it's so again, I totally commend you because that's something I'm like, I don't know if I would ever have it in me. And I think that's so special. I think probably for you to work on something like that that's for, in South Africa.
Oh my gosh, I was so excited. It's the first music I write for a lot of music houses in the US, but it's the first music house that I've started writing for in South Africa.
Yeah.
It's very special to me, and I just can't believe I landed the first thing that I pitched on. I'm so lucky. And that it's playing on TV, and it's like my
Hmm.
family is seeing the commercial. It's like really special to me. Also, I think it's really funny because this was like I was, up to my fucking eyeballs in work at this point. I was working really crazy hours, and I knew there needed to be a male vocal on it that
Hmm.
sounds like jolly and silly. So I like asked my friend Charlie, I was like, listen, I'm gonna pay you for this, but I'm gonna send you this track at midnight. I need you to record vocals and send it back to me before 1 a.m. because I have to meet this like 3 a.m., which is 10 a.m. in South Africa deadline. So it was all like, I mean, I love the adrenaline of those things, but we were like, after I sent it in, we're like, imagine we win this. Like how funny that would be. So that was very special. And it was also special because it was a lot of scoring. So what I mean by that is like a lot of sync points that I had to hit. If you've seen the commercial, it's like, this little boy is like
Hmm.
trying to make we called it Bucky. It's like a pickup truck out of things, and like,
Mhm.
it's all about like magic, and being a kid, and it's like gotta hit these extremely specific moments. So that was really difficult. It was one of the hardest things that I've ever worked on scoring wise, but like so fun.
It kinda different than that, obviously, but with our podcast, we talk about the importance of music in our lives, and I would be so curious as someone like yourself, what whether it's 1 or 2, what are some of those core memories that whether it was an artist of you falling in love with music? Like, was there any moment where you look back and you're like, this is my path. This is for me."
The moments where I really knew, where I was like really falling in love with music. All right, let's
Mhm.
think about
Yeah.
this. I mean, I gotta say one of them is just growing to love movies at a young age. And I was obsessed with music. So it's interesting
Yeah.
when there's something else that really takes my attention. And I like started to just develop this taste for like really kind of strange, like psychological type films. Um, when I was pretty young. Like I remember seeing like American Beauty on like playing on some TV channel when I was maybe like 12 or
Right.
something.
Yeah, same
And
here. I was young when I saw it too. I remember
yeah.
that.
And like it's like a pretty crazy movie,
Right. Yeah.
And but it was playing on a channel, and like we didn't have cable. I couldn't click and be like, what is this? What is this movie? And I always remember I just saw the scene of the girl on the roof, and the petals are falling down, and this gorgeous music was playing. Thomas Newman is like one of my all-time favorites. That score is amazing. But like even at that age, I was just like, what is this? Like what's going
Mhm.
on? And it took me like another year to finally figure out like that was American Beauty.
Yeah.
So there was this year where I just watched like Eternal Sunshine, American Beauty, I think it was I Heart Huckabees, SLC Punk, like
Mhm.
stuff that was like, what is this? Like this is
Yeah.
mind blowing.
Yeah.
So that was huge. And then I realized like, oh, I really like the role music plays in this. Oh, I think another moment. Funny, it's a very good question because
Yeah.
I'm so deep in the work of it right now that I haven't even had time to like fuck around and just like love music right now. So I haven't thought
Mhm.
about it in a minute. Man, I just really like writing songs and having someone respond to it, or respond to what I'm doing. There was a special moment. I think it was the second time we went to Seoul in South Korea, and the fans there for Nate, they usually wait at the airport. And they're really sweet, and they know all the band members. And to them, like we're a band, they don't know
Mhm.
I'm like a session player. It doesn't matter to them. And they gave us all gifts and stuff. And my birthday was coming up, and I was celebrating in Seoul. And this one girl gave me a gift of all this stuff, and she wrote me this letter. And it was like all about essentially like the way that she's grown up. Like she wants to play like pop music and play guitar, but like her family like looks down on that and probably wouldn't allow it, and like seeing me on stage was like a huge thing for her the first time I came to Seoul. So that was really special, and I still have that letter because I was like, I ended up finding her online, and we talked, and I was like, that like I relate to that,
Mhm.
growing up. And so we kind of talked through that. So that was also very special for me. It's all stuff that's outside of, it's not like, oh, when my song was on New Music
Right.
Friday, like, that stuff's cool, but it's fleeting.
Mhm.
So
Oh, no, and, like, where I can relate on a very again, a much smaller level, but having anyone even tell us if they've listened to any guest on the podcast or anybody about mental health, they're like, "I feel less alone." And I said,
yeah.
"That means more than any number, any whatever that will ever happen is that somebody listened to it and was like, I feel less alone." Like, or I see a part of me in that if, someone's talking about anxiety or just anything, it just that means so much more than any bigger picture ever.
Exactly. That stuff is really huge, and I really appreciate the messages I get privately from people. I'm not so good with keeping up with things, but I just put out this song called I Probably Love You, and it was about I was in a really bad depression last year for like 6 months. But I was dating someone really wonderful, and like I started like with the one feeling, it says in the song, the one thing that cuts through is that I probably love you. And like it was such a I was like, this is such a specific topic Is this like kind of like am I just doing it for me? Like, is anyone gonna relate to it? But at the end of the day, it's like you are just writing your own truth. I'm not like
Mhm.
pandering to other people. But I got messages from people about it, and I was like, okay, cool. Like, people know what I'm talking about. They were like, yeah, I was like dating this person. I was really depressed, and it was so hard to communicate to them what was going on. And the relationship didn't work out. And I have a lot of guilt about it, about, not being able to get through it. And I was like, I'm so sorry that you went through that, but wow, I didn't think I was going to get people being like, hey, this thing you went through, like, I went through that too.
Yeah, no, that was one of the songs that I was actually gonna ask you about too because, and what the response was like, and also I could see, like, I can relate to that too, it wasn't depression, but my anxiety, I was just figuring out, "Oh, I have an anxiety disorder," and I was dating someone, and when I look back at that time, um, and just realizing that, again, I couldn't communicate. I didn't even know myself. Now I know I had this. This is why I did this, or this is why
Mm.
I tended to isolate a little more, or whatever it was. And I think listening to that song, I said I could see a lot of people be in that position, and it's not an easy position.
No, it's really, really complicated, and it was very painful to write. And like I put off mixing it for like over a year, which I don't normally do. I'm very like in the moment with things, and I'd like to like finish it while I'm feeling the thing. And then having come out of that depression and thankfully being a lot better now,
Mhm.
it was really hard to sit and mix that and be like, oh man, baby
Mhm.
girl, like
Yeah.
bad spot. And I
Yeah.
really loved this person too, and like they're not in my life anymore. It's like it was very painful on many levels, but I'm really glad that I did put it out. And yeah, it's wild to be figuring out yourself and something with your mental health that's like huge, a
Mhm.
huge thing. While you're really close to someone else. I don't know why people I haven't talked about it that much, but it's one thing to be figuring that out and you're single, but when you're in a romantic partnership, I was like, I don't know how to navigate this.
Mhm.
And I'm still like struggling with that, even with dating. It's like, oh, at what point do I tell them like,
Right.
hey, so I'm like very depressed, you
Right.
know?
Oh, I've been there even in my relationship now. It's like, at what point do I say, like, "Look, I have an anxiety disorder," where sometimes it's a struggle to even get off the couch, or sometimes I don't wanna go out with everybody, I wanna
Yeah.
isolate, or I, might, in a weird way, freak out if, like, the parking's a certain way, and
Yeah.
navigating that and having to be like, "But I'm really, really chill and really awesome, I promise, but, yeah, this is what you're getting into." So I
Yeah.
think too, this is such a great conversation to have because so many people, I don't think we've even touched on that on with this podcast. I don't think anyone has shared that. So it's really, this is going to be such an important thing to share. And of course, hopefully pull people to that song because I think it's just so relatable.
Yeah, awesome.
Do you think too, music with your mental health has helped aid you and kind of been that crutch during some of those hard moments?
It was for a long time. What was so especially devastating about this last, I don't even know what to call it, depression episode, I
Mhm.
don't know,
Right. Yeah.
was that I was incredibly burnt out for the first time in my life, which happened at 32. So I'm like, all right, I have a pretty good track record. And so I also didn't know how to cope with burnout.
Mhm.
And at that point, this is something I'm still needing to keep an eye on. I'm extremely grateful for the job that I have and the work, but there's something about when your passion becomes like your career and your livelihood. That's really intense, and I just started to honestly lose my passion for writing, and I'm like tearing up thinking about it
Mhm.
because it was so incredibly sad. Like, and I got to the point a few months into being really depressed. And at that time, I was like doing some commercial jobs, but I was saying no to a lot of stuff. And I
Mhm.
was very lucky because I earn royalties. So a lot of my getting paid is delayed anyway, so I could kind of just, be a mess and be depressed.
Mhm,
But it was like the one time that music was not bringing me out of that hole, and then I started to question like, do I want to do this? There's a
mhm,
lot about this industry that I really hate. A lot of hurtful stuff happened leading up to that. It was just a storm of stuff. I had a tour canceled. Like it was just, it's like, man, I'm like giving everything to this. And it's not even a feeling of, I'm not like, oh, I'm owed something. Like I should be
mhm,
bigger. It's not like that. It's like, I'm waking up in the morning, like not wanting to get out of bed. I
mhm,
don't want to. I had meetings all the time with people about shit that I don't fucking care about. And like, I know there's a certain amount of stuff that you have to do with that and be an adult and read contracts
mhm,
and negotiate things and advocate for yourself. But it was like every fucking day. And now I'm in a better spot with it. But yeah, so during that, music didn't get me out of it. Sewing and fashion did.
mhm,
So I went home, it was about a year ago at this point, and my mom knew. I was like, I'm very depressed right now.
mhm,
But I'm excited to see you, but I'm gonna be pretty low key.
mhm,
And started working out and like trying to, that always makes me feel better. And then fucking we were grocery shopping in this like mall thing, and my mom was like, "Hey, do you want to check out this fabric store?" It's like, whatever, I don't really care. I don't
yeah,
care about anything right now.
mhm,
But then I was like, whoa, this is so cool. And like something like turned on in my brain again.
mhm,
And my mom is a very talented seamstress. So she was like, why don't we make something? She was so smart about like helping me out of my depression. Cause it wasn't like, I think we should do this because you'll feel better. It was just like,
yeah,
oh, she saw like I'm paying attention to something again, you know?
yeah,
And then I couldn't wait to get out of bed that holiday. I was like, something's changing.
mhm,
So, yeah, I studied pattern making in Manhattan for like a few weeks and made my friends outfits and saw their smiles on their faces when they'd like come out of my bathroom, like wearing it, when we're doing fittings. And then I started writing again, but so art got me out of it, but it doesn't always have to be the thing that you think is your number one.
mhm, and I love you for sharing that too, because while mine is very, very different, and people are gonna laugh at this, so me, at some of my worst moments too, and again, I guess you would call it a depressive episode. I went through that, and I wouldn't get out of bed. There were days I didn't shower, and I noticed someone else listening to that that's like, "How could you not?" But what got me
Really?
through that was, uh, honest was I, saw on Instagram there's squirrel benches you could get for squirrels outside, and I was like, "Oh, I
That's
guess
so
that'd be
cute.
nice. Let me buy this. Let me do this," and so I get it, and I would always put, like, a little bit of food on the bench and hoping, like, whatever, and nobody ever came. So, like, a week later, we have, like, the door open, and you can see, and sure enough, like, the food was gone, and I'm, like, watching, and so every day the squirrels would come. I would pull up if I went somewhere and got out of bed and was like, "All right," or I got the mail, the squirrels would, like, run and get the food. And now it's become a thing where every morning it would give me that weird purpose of, you have to get out of bed because you're feeding these squirrels. Like, you're leaving you're
Oh,
doing this, and it sounds so silly, but it gave me that, "Let me get out of bed," because
I
they would
love that story so
they
much
would wait
because
for me.
yeah, because often you think about that stuff and you're like, oh, the thing that's gonna get me out of bed is like my life purpose and the hustle. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, that kind of drives you, but sometimes you just gotta be like lately for me, I've been sober for a minute now.
Mhm.
So that's like a big thing I'm working on. And I'm just like, I'll lie in bed and just be like, I don't want to get out of bed right now. And then I'm like, but this Colombian coffee shop is like a
Mhm.
block away. And I'm drinking it
Yeah.
now. They make this delicious coffee, and literally just the
Oh,
thought of that, I'm like, "All right, let's go. Let's go." Just
yeah.
it can be something so small.
Yeah. No, oh gosh, like, coffee is my thing. I'm like, "That's me later." I'm like, I'll get my cup of coffee," but yeah, those squirrels, like, just whatever it is, and now it's cute where, like, I open my door and they wait for me, so I'm like, it's a thing where I'm
Oh,
like, like, people would, again, laugh, but they literally helped me out of my worst days, and now it's my little purpose. I'm a little Snow White. I'm, like, here in New Jersey, but
oh my gosh, I love that so much.
and they're so cute. So it's like, But even, like, touching on something too, like your song, "Something New," I resonated that with that a little bit because in doing a little research on what you've said about the song and then listening to it and thinking about my life, how it is whether it's a creative nature you move somewhere, like even me moving here, right? I always wanted to be the East Coast. I was like, I want to be near New York. I want to do that with music, although I don't play it. And then you sometimes can question things like, is this worth it? If you leave all your comfort, obviously you left so much behind and kind of getting that question of, is it worth it? Did I mess up? Did I make a mistake? Do you think that song was really therapeutic for you and in a way of letting that out there.
Yeah, definitely. That was another like topic that I wasn't having a lot of conversations with
Mhm,
people. Sometimes I still find it hard to be very vulnerable, like especially at that time, like I do put on it's not a mask, but like I think I project an air of like I have my shit together and I know what I
mhm.
want and like
Yeah,
there is a big part of me that is like that, but through songwriting, I often get to the like deeper things below that I'm feeling that I wouldn't normally pay attention to unless I was writing. So it's something new. That one was interesting because I was like between tours. I was really starting to feel like I didn't want to tour anymore. And it's like, what do I do now? So I was like in a real transitional place. And that song, I think I wrote it in 10 minutes.
mhm.
Like, it was just one of those magical ones that just happened. And I was like, wow, so this is how I feel. Like
Yeah,
there's a part of me that's like, yeah, I'm kicking ass, I'm playing shows all over the world. I love this. But then
mhm,
there's like on a deeper level, like, what is my purpose? Like,
mhm.
is this fulfilling my life purpose? And like, I left my family behind and like I miss them,
Yeah,
And like I can like hide that as much as I want, but like it's there, it's real.
mhm. No, that it's I mean, I've had in hearing, like, you talk about that song, I'm like, I can so relate to that because there were so many times where, again, I when everybody said, "Oh my god, it's your dream to be near New York. It was your dream to be East Coast. You always said you were moving to the East Coast and getting out of the Midwest." And almost like you said, I don't know if it was like a masking thing, but, oh, it's so great. Oh, this is so great. I could see the skyline from the bay and, um, I've been to the city a few times, but it was more so like, "Oh, but I'm really, like, not getting out of bed on some days because it's really rough. It's
Yeah.
really expensive. I have no friends. I have to, change my career," and just those feelings of feeling that way and try not to mask that, right? But, it's tough
Yeah.
because you don't not that you don't wanna not be wrong, but I guess sometimes maybe admitting that, right? That you're a little whether it's scared or just unsure, right? Like, I do. So I hope everyone that's listening goes to check out that song because I enjoyed it so much, and I had so much fun getting into your music and finding it.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I really like exploring the gray areas in those emotions, because we're complex and it's not just like everyone's going through so much. It's
Mhm,
like even when things seem I think even talking to some acquaintances who don't know me on a deeper level, like my close friends, it seems like they're always like, "Oh, you're working so hard, you're hustling, it's so amazing," and they're very supportive, and it's great. But it's like, yeah, like you said, there are some really hard days, and
yeah,
and it's nice that I can be honest about that through song.
yeah.
To this day, I don't like. I'm sure you can tell. I like get very teary eyed talking about very vulnerable stuff. I find it
Yeah.
hard to just like talk about it with people. But in a song, I'm like, let's go. I
Mhm.
can play that on stage and really be in the moment. So that's my therapy for myself.
Love that. I mean, it's even talking about being on stage. I know not too long ago you played a show for the first time. I don't know if it was like a year or a really long time. How was that getting back on stage after a while and playing in front of people?
So wild. It takes such
Yeah.
a long break. Yeah, on that
Yeah.
that aforementioned, episode of depression played a huge role in it. I think it was like 14 months that I didn't gig. And now when I did play again, it was so much fun. And I was
Mhm.
like, I was ready. I had the mental capacity. I was excited. I was sober, so I was like very clear minded about it. I didn't walk up to the bar once, which is so crazy for me.
Yeah.
Um, so so I got distracted by a little icon that popped up, a little
No.
hand on the Zoom.
Oh,
Um,
no.
so that was also very special because it's like all the emotions I was feeling was like about this purity of like the show and friendship and all this stuff, and just playing music. Whereas in the past, there's been the crossover into party mode that's part of it. So there was none of that. I also have come to a place where I'm ready to share in other people's music again. So I was playing guitar in my best friend's band, Charles Fauna, and Charlie of Charles Fauna was playing drums in my band. So that was also very special that we felt like we had each other's backs. And it was just real camaraderie because the main act, Figaro, I did a little bit of production. I mixed and mastered his record, his first record that came out. So he played, was his debut. It was me and Charlie's for our own projects, our first time back in over a year. So it was so helpful that all of us were like, all right, like we're doing it. Let's do this, sell out the show. And it was so much prep and getting ready for it, but it felt good and it felt so worth it because, and also, things that people don't think about with performance, like I have so much gear to set up. It's like physically taxing on me to play shows like that. I bring a whole light show. I jump around a lot. The set is like nonstop. It's at half an hour right now. And I woke up the next day and was like happy and like that went well and I've like found like a peaceful place in it, which when I previously stopped playing, it was like the opposite. I could like barely talk to people. Like wasn't a human.
Oh, I'll have to like, I know I'm in New Jersey, but I'm like, I'll have to, whatever time you play, maybe I'll have to make my way out to the city and see.
Oh, it'd be so lovely.
I would love to see it. And I know where I've just enjoyed this conversation so much. I think you've said so many great things. And I know we're right here at 2024. If you can share anything, are there any big plans or anything you're excited about the new year with your music?
Yeah, I'm very excited about it because, like I said, I think I'm in a much better space now. And without like giving too much away, because I haven't like officially
Right.
announced things,
Yeah.
I wrote a lot of songs when I came out of my depression this year, and those are all going to start coming out. And then I have a show January 23rd in New York, at the new Knitting Factory and lots of other stuff booked that's going to happen. Um, and again, there's like a lot of stuff that hasn't
Yeah.
been announced, and it's like projects where it's like movies and stuff, and it's other people's, it's their
Yeah.
thing to share.
Right.
But I'm very excited. Like
Good.
I'm very much looking forward to next year.
Awesome. I can't wait to see all that. And I guess if anyone's listening to, I know I'll post all the links below, but still, maybe if they want to listen, is there any where people can find your music? I'm sure like Spotify, and things like that, but is there like anywhere people can find you easily?
Yeah, so I mean my website is just sulene.com and that'll have everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, all my music is on all the streaming services and stuff. You'll find it anywhere on
Yeah.
YouTube. There's like music videos I've made as well. I will say for listeners who are listening to this who are, thinking about the realm of mental health, I do write a Substack that is focused on being a creative and mental health and specifically dealing with depression. So that might be an interesting resource as
Yeah.
well. And that usually comes out every 2 weeks. Um, Besides that, yeah, I'm pretty active on the socials. Always showing what I'm doing. And it's just Sulene, __ for Instagram. And on TikTok, I think it's just Sulene. Oh, it's the same thing on TikTok. Yeah. So yeah, I'm very like active and showing the process and everything.
Perfect. But again, like I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I enjoyed this so much. I think this is gonna be one I think a lot of people are gonna have a lot of takeaways from, and it was so good meeting you and just I don't know. It was just such a great conversation. So I thank you
Oh,
so much
thank you
for
so
taking
much.
time and coming on here. And I can't wait for this to go out. I mean, anyone listening, I'm going to put it out Tuesday because I just know it's one of those ones I'm like, I'm going
Yay.
to work on it because I just want it out there. And especially with the holidays coming up, I'm sure people might be busy or whatever. I want it out so people can give it the proper listen. So
Oh,
again, thank you
that's so
so
great.
much.
I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. It
Yes.
was lovely to talk about all this stuff.
Oh, absolutely. We'll talk. All right, guys. And that was our conversation with Sulene. Again, it was just such a great conversation. I felt so seen. I loved everything she shared. And again, truly, I just feel that so many of us can relate to so many things she said. Again, just in total shock of her talent and just so I could have asked her so many more questions, but I really wanted to keep it as brief as I could because I understood she was so busy and appreciated the time she took for us. And it just meant a lot that she did that for us. I'll have all the links below as always, including to that Substack she mentions at the end for anybody else dealing with mental health and just that can relate to something like that. Guys, here it is. This is the last episode of 2023 for this little podcast. Again, I thank anyone else for listening to this and whether you were a guest on the show. It means a lot to Justine and I. And I truly appreciate every person that has taken the time to listen to this thing, to share it, to find something of themselves in this podcast, to feel less alone. That's why we do it. And a lot of things happened this year. And it it truly makes me emotional thinking about it, and when we sat down recording this very first episode that we did, all the amazing people we connected with and guests, and I can't thank everybody enough, and I can't wait for 2024 and show you what we've been working on, and let's keep this conversation going and more conversations about ending the stigma of mental health, and I can't wait to show you guys what we've been working on, but as for me, and of course my girl Justine if she was here, we will see you guys next year because we are taking that 2-week break. Um, we will be back after the holidays. I promise you. And it's going to be a good time. But love you guys. And we will talk soon. Have a wonderful Christmas, holiday, however you celebrate this time. Great new year. And let's just get in 2024. Let's have a great year, everybody. All right. Bye, guys.